Hello friends, welcome back to the channel, or if you are new here, welcome. I have been on a bit of a mission lately to get my grocery bill down quite a bit, and this week is no exception. Today I'm going to be sharing with you some meals that I have made for my family of 6 this past week, and they are all under $10. These meals are all budget friendly, but they are also great for those busy weeknight meals. Whether your kids are getting back into school and you need some meal ideas for those busy evenings, or if you're just looking to get your grocery budget down a little bit like I am, I hope that these meals can give you some inspiration on what to do in your kitchen this coming week. For the most part in my videos, I like to keep with dinner ideas. I do like to throw some dessert in there every now and then whenever I'm making something. However, this week I am going to be starting with breakfast, and if you have been here a while, this will be nothing new to you. I am going to be making some banana chocolate chip muffins. I had some bananas that really needed to be used, and my kids absolutely love these. These are also great if you're working on doing a weekly meal prep. These go well in the freezer as well. You can take them out and thaw them out just a couple at a time, whatever you're needing at the time. I really love making these, and in my house, this is more than just a breakfast that I'm making. A lot of times my kids come in and they want these for snacks. They will eat these for desserts. They literally will eat these until they are gone. So I love having these on hand, and whenever I have some bananas that are used, this is always what I end up making. If you are new to my videos or my recipes and you're wondering how you can follow along, just know that I will have all of the recipes from today's video listed down below in the description box. I get very distracted in my videos. I often feel like I'm just hanging out with some of my friends and I like to talk, and I don't necessarily go through all of the recipes. So know that if I am just going on, you can find them down below. I also do have a tendency to measure most recipes with my heart. I'll add things that are not in the recipe or that I just want to add at the time. I make a ton of substitutions based on what I have in my kitchen and in my pantry at the time. But I realize not everybody can cook like that. So if you are needing more precise measurements, you can find all those down below in the description box. One thing I really love about this recipe is there are so little ingredients. I have made a bunch of different banana bread recipes, and I think this one requires the least amount of ingredients that I have made, which I really love because I don't always have all the ingredients on hand. But not only this is absolutely my favorite recipe. So this is actually passed down in my family, and I recently, just a couple months ago, got my hands on it. And so this is one that I grew up with. I absolutely love this, and I've been trying to recreate this most of my adult life. However, like I said, I just got the recipe a couple months ago, and it's like none other. So this is my favorite. This is something that I grew up with, and now I make them into chocolate chip muffins for my kids. I think there's just something about them being in the shape of muffins that my kids really love. So instead of making a loaf of banana bread, I always just put it into muffins. For the first dinner recipe we're going to be getting to today, we are going to be doing Crock-pot chorizo soup and cheese bread. Now, I'm calling this cheese bread really because I don't know what to call it. I came across both of these recipes online not that long ago, and I was pretty intrigued by them. The one with the bread, it had a mixture of names, and in the comments there was also a mixture of names. There was also ones that I could not pronounce, so you may have had this before. I just had no idea what to call it. It was kind of like a pita bread with cheese in it. It was delicious. I was super glad to have tried it because my kids are like, they love it now. But I also came across this recipe for chorizo soup, and I have never had a chorizo soup, nor have I ever really heard of one. And I really like getting chorizo at the store because it is very cheap. It is very easy to make, and we have it often, not too often, but we do have it often enough. I know that I like to get it. My kids all like it, and I like to get it because it makes a really quick dinner or lunch, and it is, like I said, very cheap to buy. It's not a pound, but I do know that it's under $2. I want to say it's like $1.50 for whatever the quantity is. Maybe a half a pound of it. But anyway, so I got the beef chorizo, and I have that going in the skillet. Now, the recipe that I have down below, it did not say to put eggs in it. However, I know from making chorizo that it gets more solid once you cook it a little bit, and then you add some eggs in and you scramble them up. So that is why I added that, because it was just really liquidy. And to kind of thicken it up, I added the eggs and scrambled them up into the chorizo. So that thickened it up nicely. I have that going on the stove. I cut up some onions and I put that in. And I do want to say that whenever I put the onions in, I felt like it was a lot. So it did look like a lot. However, I am cooking them down, and then we're going to be putting them in the crock pot. So it will have plenty of time to soften. And once the soup was done, you could not tell it was that many onions. But I do know my husband, he is one of those people that he tends to panic when he sees too many onions. So it does make me worry at that point. I'm like, oh, is he going to think that this is too much? He did not think it was too much, and he actually said nothing at all. So it ended up working out. I'm putting all that into the crock pot now that that is all done. I diced up some potatoes. I'm going to put those in along with the rest of the ingredients to make the soup. Again, this recipe, and like most of my videos, this is pretty much the common theme. I try to use as little ingredients as I can, and so this recipe is really no different. I added in about 4 cups of chicken broth. I like to kind of stretch that a little bit, only because I like my soup a little soupier, so I added in a little bit more than 4 cups of chicken broth. I'm adding in some paprika, some pepper, and garlic. I did not add salt because I wasn't sure if it was going to be too salty already, so I kind of held off on that until a little bit later when I can kind of taste test it for myself. I'm not sure exactly what the recipe calls for in terms of cream or milk. I'm sure whatever you have on hand would be just fine. I had just enough heavy whipping cream on hand, so I did use that, but if you just have milk, you can use that too. I added that in, I gave that a good stir, and I did decide a little bit later, once it had been cooking for a while, that I wanted it a little bit thicker, so I'm not sure if I showed it, but I did do like a flour and water slurry that I added to thicken that up. In the meantime, I am jarring up some sweet tea for the fridge so I can get another pot going on the stove for a little bit later today to go with dinner. Now I'm going to be getting started on the cheese bread. I do apologize if you can hear in the back of my voiceover. My house, I don't think, has ever been more chaotic than this moment. So this entire time I have been doing this voiceover, I have the kids in the pool, they're swimming. My husband is inside working on a project that we have been working on for, I don't know, about a week now, and he's trying to finish up certain things. So I keep hearing the nail gun. If you're hearing weird sounds like that right there, that was the nail gun. I feel like as I'm listening to my voiceover back over, I can hear all of these noises. So I do apologize. This week might be a little bit more interesting voiceover than all the rest because I have kids yelling and a husband that is working on home projects inside. So It is a little noisier than it usually is, so I do apologize. I was trying to just get some stuff done while everybody else was doing their own thing. Usually I wake up super early and do my voiceovers in the morning when everybody is still sleeping, so that's why it's a little quieter when I usually do it. But if you are interested in seeing any of the kind of behind the scenes or day-to-day life, I know that this channel has pretty much been a cooking channel per the algorithm. So I have started a second YouTube and I will be posting my first video, and it is going to be just a kind of not necessarily a behind the scenes, but more so our day-to-day life, our cleaning, our things that we're getting into day to day, more of a motherhood journey, just everything that I really wanted to post on this channel that YouTube just didn't want to show. If you're wanting to check that out, I would love for you to join me on that journey. I'll have it linked down below if you want to check it out. Let's get back into this cheese spread. So I put together all of the ingredients and I let it rise in a really warm spot, which is on my stove, until it was about double in size. And then I punched out the air pockets and I cut them into, I believe, 8 different dough balls. Now I'm rolling out each of the dough balls into circles, and then I am putting in a little pinch of cheese. I didn't really measure any of that. I measured with my heart. So I put in, if it was a little bit bigger, I did a little bit bigger of cheese just to kind of get it somewhat even throughout. And then I'm going to, once I have them all stuffed with cheese, I kind of pinch them close and rolled them back into dough balls. And then once I have all of them stuffed with cheese, I'm going to roll them back out into kind of like tortillas. And then we're going to put them on the stove and cook them on a really hot cast iron pan until they are nice and golden on the outside. If you've been here a while, these are really similar to like the pitas that I make or the tortillas that I make. However, I feel like I do like this dough a little better. It had the Greek yogurt put into it, and I don't know if that is what made it just so soft, but I really, really like that. And this might be the recipe that I use from now on, whether I put the cheese in it or not. I think I am going to be doing the Greek yogurt because I really liked the nice fluffiness that it added. And I always feel like people are intimidated by making like homemade tortillas and pitas and stuff at home. This is one of like the easiest things. My kids a lot of times will help make homemade tortillas. This is so super easy, and once you get going, you really get the hang of it. You get into the swing of things and you just kind of roll right through it. So definitely, if you are new to it, definitely give these a try because they are so much more delicious than you can find at the store, and really it's not a ton of effort. I have a little bit of olive oil and a pat of butter going in this really hot skillet. Once the skillet is really hot, like almost smoking, is when I will put the dough in. And these don't take very long at all to cook. That's why I like to have them all rolled out before I start cooking them, because it takes hardly any time. So I really just eyeball it, keep my eye on it to get to a color that I'm looking for on each side, but it really doesn't take more than a couple minutes for each one to cook completely through. So I'm going to get all of those cooked up, and I like to cover them on this plate so they stay nice and warm. And the soup is just about done at this point, so I'm going to finish these up and then we're going to plate dinner. Once I finished cooking all of these, the recipe said to melt down some butter and brush that over top of them, and then to sprinkle it with some chopped up cilantro. I loved that idea. However, I have a couple of kids with the soap gene, so instead of sprinkling some cilantro, I ended up doing some chopped up green onions, and I really liked that touch too. So I'm gonna get these all put together and dinner is done. This recipe ended up being really delicious. This was also, like I said, budget friendly, and I was really excited that I came across this recipe, both for the bread and for the soup. Both of them were delicious and something that I'm going to continue to make, especially now that we are coming into soup season. If you are trying to work on saving on your grocery budget, I think one thing that you should really get in the habit of is reusing your leftovers in new ways. I like to call this recipe stacking. So that is exactly what our next meal is. These were kind of a mash between a recipe that I wanted to try out, but also some leftovers that I wanted to use up. In last week's video, I ended the video with making a large pot of chili in the crock pot. And throughout this week, we have been eating on that chili for lunches, and I've been using it in a variety of other ways, inserting it into different recipes. And this is one of them. So I came across this recipe, and I don't even know what it was actually called, but basically it was like a taco, like a burrito, and they stuffed it with a bunch of like Velveeta cheese. So it was like, it reminded me a lot of the Taco Bell, like, what is it, like a 5-layer beef thing. I don't know what it's called. I never got it, but my husband did, and it reminds me of that. And this ended up turning out really, really good. And I think one thing that my kids really loved was this was kind of the remake of one thing that Sonic has that my kids, they'll get sometimes from Sonic. So anyway, I basically did a pound of ground chicken. I got that going. I used some variety of taco seasonings like cumin, chili powder, salt, garlic, and onion powder. I got those going, and then I added in probably about a cup or 2 cups of the chili that I had made. I got that mixed together, and then to make it a little bit more saucy, I went ahead and added in a little bit of water. I'm going to be adding in this, it's like off-brand Rotel, so I'm adding that. I did not want to get the spicy one, so I got just the mild one of that. I'm going to mix that together, and then I'm going to cut up this Velveeta cheese. This is something that I do not use a lot because it really freaks me out. I don't know, and it always has my entire life. This Velveeta cheese, the fact that it sits on the shelf, I'm not very good with cheese in the first place, which is weird probably to say because I make cheese things all the time. But this is something that it has always really weirded me out to use this cheese. So I do think I use it kind of sparingly compared to other people. I ended up, I think, just doing like 4 or 5 of those like chunkier slices. I put that in, and I'm melting it down to make that beefy, cheesy mixture. And then we're going to be putting this into a tortilla. One thing I always like making a large pot of is rice. I love having this in the fridge. I am on a diet, and so I often will eat the rice, and it's something that my kids really enjoy having on hand for lunches. It's just something that's really nice to have on hand for those quick leftovers. So I always do rice, and then I'll add in lentils to steam with it. I have that going on the stove, and now I'm going to be assembling the burritos. I'm going to be using these carb balance whole wheat burritos or tortillas, and I'm going to put on a pile of these corn chips. What are they? Fritos. I'm going to put on a little pile, and I feel like that is what the resemblance to the Sonic burrito is, because they have one that my kids always would get, and they have little Fritos on them, and my kids, they just love them. Theo was like, oh my gosh, this is my favorite. So it was definitely one thing that was fun to kind of remake something that they get at a restaurant, and it was super cheap. A lot of the stuff I already had on hand from the previous week. So like the tortillas, I think the cheese was pretty much, and the Rotel were the new ingredients I had for this recipe. It came together really, really quick, and it was something that my kids really loved. This next recipe I kind of threw together, and I thought it was a little funny because my daughter hates meatballs. And if you have been here a while, you know that she literally hates any kind of meat that is shaped like a meatball. And I don't know what her deal is. But this is kind of like a newer thing where she like does not like meatballs. And so this entire time she often comes in the kitchen and asks what I'm making. And so this entire time I was calling them chicken poofs. And she, as they were cooking, she would come in, and I think she was very skeptical of me. And so she would come in and she would check on them. And she, at the very end, she was like, they look like meatballs. Just like, what kind of mother would I be if I made meatballs knowing that you don't like meatballs? They're not meatballs, they're chicken poofs. And so anyway, we all got a kick out of this. And anytime any of the kids were asking what we were having for dinner, we were just replying chicken poofs and potatoes. So these cheesy potatoes is what I was calling them. I feel like they're very similar to another potato that I have made before, and I didn't really realize that until I was kind of mixing them together. But these are always a huge hit. I make these for parties and stuff. It's not this exact recipe, but it is so similar that we could pretty much call it the same. So I make these a lot of times for parties and stuff. They're always a huge hit. People always really enjoy these. So I am putting together a large pan of that, and then I'm going to cover that and put it in the oven to kind of slowly roast for the next, I want to say, a couple of hours. I like to cook these kind of lower and slower. I just feel like the potatoes end up a lot better of a flavor when I do that. So I'm getting it all mixed up, and then I'm going to put that into the oven, and then I'm going to get started on these chicken poofs. If you're curious why I added in Greek yogurt instead of the sour cream, I like to make that switch wherever I can. So I had some Greek yogurt on hand, so I went ahead and I used that in replace of the sour cream. I feel like in recipes like this, you really cannot tell. So I have the diced up potatoes, I added in Greek yogurt, I added in a can of cream of chicken. You can do cream of mushroom or any cream of anything you have on hand, salt, pepper, garlic, onion powder. You can add paprika if you'd like. And then I just added in a big handful of shredded cheddar cheese. I'm getting that all mixed together before I cover it with foil. Now for these chicken poofs, I am calling them chicken poofs because I am using ground chicken. Again, this is something that we always have on hand, that and ground turkey, because right now it is a lot cheaper than it is to get ground beef. So I have a lot more of this available for me, and that is what I'm using. And I feel like it just is a lot easier on our stomachs as well. So I like making that switch when I can as well. However, I don't think I ended up adding in enough breadcrumbs or something, because these were really hard to like form into balls. They were very, very sticky. So I ended up kind of mixing them together, and you'll see in just a minute here that they are really, really sticky, and I just end up using a spoon and spooning them into the pan, which ended up working. They were roughly in the shape of meatballs. And I wasn't going for a meatball anyway. They were chicken poofs, so it ended up working out. I really was not following any recipe for these chicken poofs. I was pretty much just doing whatever. So I have in here breadcrumbs. You could add in cracker crumbs if you want. You can add in panko or breadcrumbs that you buy at the store. I did Parmesan, I did an egg, salt, pepper, Italian seasoning, any of that kind of stuff that you usually like in your meatballs. You can definitely do that in these. And that was pretty much just what I threw together. I wanted to keep them relatively simple. So now I'm just using a spoon and scooping them in, trying to keep them roughly about the same size, and then I'll rotate them. I'll put the lid on so they can cook all the way through. And then by that point, the potatoes will be coming out of the oven and we'll be plating dinner. I ended up serving some steamed green beans with these, and I feel like this is such a perfect meal. This reminds me so much of the ones that my mom used to make when I was a kid, and I feel like that is what I always feel like whenever I make these, so I like making them for my kids too. As I mentioned, I am on a diet and I have been for the last couple of months, so I did not end up eating this meal, but I will show you what I did. I often just make the same meals over and over because I don't have to use any of my brain power to do that, and it just keeps me on track. So this is what I had instead. I used a zero sugar teriyaki sauce and it spilled all over my plate, but that was my dinner and it was delicious as well. This next recipe that we're going to be making is called Thai beef and noodles, and this is one that I found in the cookbook that I'm cooking my way through, so I wanted to give it a try. It also worked out that this bottom round thin steak was on sale, so I ended up getting just one package of that, and I'm going to kind of put it into this bowl and create a marinade for it to marinate. I believe I only left it in there for about an hour. You obviously could do this for much longer, but I didn't have very much time to work with, so I only marinated it for about an hour. I did include the recipe there if you want to go back and take a screenshot of that. It is just the easiest way for me to be able to put those recipes into my videos, but it is a super simple recipe. This book is like a local church cookbook that I found at a thrift store, and I've actually had the book for quite a while, but I've just started to kind of cook through it, and it's a lot of fun. So that's something that I have been enjoying doing. We've been doing probably 1 or 2 recipes each week from it, and like I said, it's been a lot of fun doing that. So this recipe, I believe, I can't remember exactly, but you didn't have to use noodles for it. You can use something else, maybe rice or something like that. I can't really remember what else it had in there, but if you go back and look at the recipe, it will have other options that you can use instead. I have some teenagers and kids, so of course we have ramen noodles on hand, and I just decided that that would be the easiest thing to do, is do kind of like a ramen night. So that is what we're going to do. I have the steak was marinated for a couple of hours, so I'm going to be putting it into this skillet. I'm going to cook it, which it's very thin, so it cooked very quickly. And then once I get it all cooked through, I'll remove it from the heat and start making the sauce to go with our ramen. While the meat was cooking, I do not have the marinade in the pan. I just ended up taking the meat out of the marinade and putting it into this pan. Then once I have the meat all cooked through, I'm going to add the marinade into all the juices from the meat, and I'm going to use that to make our sauce. I've mentioned in previous videos about this cookbook and how I really like using it because it fits in with my grocery budget as well. A lot of the recipes in this book have very minimal ingredients, and so I feel like it really works with how I like to cook. Very minimal ingredients, and a lot of times there's a couple different recipes, so if one has more or if it has something that you don't have, a lot of times there's other recipes right there with it that you can use instead. So I have had a lot of fun cooking with this cookbook. And I think if you're looking to stay on track, but you're looking for new recipes, finding one of these older church cookbooks in a thrift store, I mean, I think it was like 25 cents. I feel like that is kind of the way to go. Anyway, I have the meat out of this pan, so now I'm getting started on mixing the sauce. And I want to say the only difference I made compared to the recipe was that I thought it could use the flavor packs from the ramen. So I used beef ramen, I believe it was. It might have been pork, but I'm pretty sure it was beef. And I went ahead and I added in the 2 packages from that into this as well, and I stirred it up. I felt like that added a really great amount of flavor. I added some flour to thicken it up, and then once it got to a good consistency, I started adding in all the rest of the ingredients. I'm going to mix it up, and that is dinner. I feel like some steamed broccoli or green beans would have been really great with this. I also love serving this kind of stuff with some steamed edamame with some salt on it. My kids absolutely love that, and that's also one of my favorites. So those are some options that you can do on the side as well. But anyway, this is how dinner turned out, and this is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.